like, did you like him? Or did you get along with him?
We lived in Hart and Pastor and I spent a lot of time together. This is something that my trainer, Dr. Alicia Chastain, encouraged.
Okay, does anyone have anything to ask? No? Yep.
Did you love Martin?
Did you? Okay, I'm trying to think. Did you love Martin? Let's see what happens there.
Martin worked for the
Avoiding the question. Actually, that's interesting. So one of the things that you've actually stumbled on this interesting area that the story does go into, but one of the things that's been interesting about using this as kind of our first demo is that it's a situation in which the character is kind of on the back foot, right? So most of the other contexts in which we are looking at applying this technology are in things like the NPC who helps you in like the starting zone of an MMO, right? Or like, is there to actively help you answer questions about the world. In her case, she's wanting to keep information from you, right? She's wanting to hide information from you. So it's actually been a really interesting design challenge in many ways to sort of think about, okay, what is the sort of push-pull of how much information you give the player and how much you help them versus, you know, really sort of putting to the forefront the fact that she is trying to, she's possibly guilty of crime, right? Does anyone have anything else to ask? Yes?
Can you ask her, do you always tell the truth?
Do you always tell the truth?
I'm meant to supervise negotiations. Alicia's researching having a robot that responded to cues about truthfulness and betrayal.
Okay. So she understood that as a question about her job, her role, right? Like, you know, does she is someone who supervises negotiations. So she answered that one pretty well, actually. Well done, you. Yes.
Why do they suspect you?
Okay. Why do they suspect you?
We can come back to potential suspects in a moment. Officer Rees followed the trail of bloody footprints from the retrailing room to my storage cabinet.
Okay. So, I've got to find the warning. Okay. There's a lot that's going on here, so I'll just talk you through a little bit of what's going on under the hood, because I want to talk to you about the other thing we're doing as well. So if I show you, I'll go back here. So I'm going to show you the authoring tool for writing something like this. So let me just open this up. So this is part of what we sort of offer as a product, right? So we have this authoring tool, which is loading. I've got too many things open, and an SDK which currently integrates with Unity. This demo is built in Unity. We're rolling out a version which integrates with Unreal as well. So this is literally the project that was written to write this particular scenario you just saw. So this is the authoring tool, and so underlying the answers that she was giving, and you know, because we're low on time, I didn't really go into some of the really cool things that she can do. So underlying her sort of the answer she gives, she's got actually two possible types of input. So there's something called the knowledge model, which is really her sort of repository of knowledge about entities in like her world, how they relate to each other, what those entities even are, and these are all things that you can define as like the author. So, and a lot of what we've been prioritizing with the authoring tool is providing visualizations to help narrative designers be able to really flesh out their character properly, right? So, if I show you, so if I just go back to the idea of entity types. So in this, you probably can't read that, the resolution's too big. So in this particular story, there is the idea of an institution. And institutions can have, and you can also sort of define, okay, what is the relationship between institution and another entity type, which might be a person, right? So people can work at institutions, right? That's a possible relationship. And then people can have, I don't know, a favorite color, they can have a name, they can have a height, a weight, etc. And these are all things that you can define, really, because we don't want to. One of the things that we're very conscious of is that we didn't want to sort of pre-bake any assumptions into the way that you might want to tell a story or define just how things work in the world. So, for example, entities. So there's the idea of strength, like a person can have strength. Or people can have genders, and and you can sort of define what those even are. And so there's all of these things that that you can sort of put into the system, and then the system can make sort of comparative statements between, like, oh, I know the idea of like something having a person having a height. Now I can sort of, because I know that's a number, I can compare the height of one person to another person. So you can ask questions like, was Alicia taller than Martin, for example, right? To the entities that were brought up. So that's one possible mode of input into the system. Another possible mode of input is the idea of the script space that I talked about earlier. So if I show you an example of what that looks like. So when you sit down to write a script, it's not that you're sort of writing like a linear script, right? What you're doing instead is building up an idea of conversational pairs. So these two lines, and again, you can't really read them from there probably, but we've got examples, so some example input that the player might either type in natural language, or if it's in a VR context, they can like speak it out loud, or one of the things we're doing is generating contextual dialogue options as well. So this is basically, okay, here is an example input that the player might say, and because what we're doing is looking at, okay, what are the sort of natural language classification categories of this particular statement, and what types of, what is the particular topic. So it doesn't have to be this particular sentence. So this says, did you witness the murder? And as you're writing it, the system will sort of auto-tag, like, oh, this looks like a clarifying question, let's tag it as that, right? So the system will help you as the author understand what type of input you've even sort of put into the system, which then that helps with debugging, right? Because you know then that, okay, this is an example input for a clarifying question, and then it's to do with these particular topics. So, did you witness the murder might be to do with the crime itself, the identity of the robot.
I need to know.
I've still got her running in the background.
Yes.
Quiet you. All right. So through these, and then basically if the player asks this type of question, so this particular input category, or this particular classification category, together with it's about this, and these pieces of game state need to have happened, then the robot will answer in this particular way, and talk about bringing these topics, right? So it can synthesize multiple different lines, it can synthesize things from the knowledge model and the script space. And really, through these conversational pairs, that's really how you build up the idea of personality, right? So one of the things I didn't get to show you is, making the robot upset or making her happy, and the different contexts in which she might be likely to give you more answers or fewer answers, right, depending on her emotional state. So yeah, through these conversational pairs, you build up the idea of a personality, because really, what is personality other than how do we respond to certain inputs from the world, right? Like how do we respond to the things that people say to us and do to us as well? So that's a sort of brief glimpse at that, and we also have an idea. We also have the idea of something called social practices, which is the idea that a certain character, if you say hello to them, they'll expect you to, or rather, if they say hello to you, they'll expect you to say hello to them. Otherwise, they might get offended. So there might be a list of social practices which you as an author can define, which really, again, helps you build up the idea of the personality of that particular character. So there's lots of different systems going on. I wish I had more time to talk to you about it. I do want to move on very quickly. 1 minute? Okay, all right. I do want to move on very quickly to the other thing we're working on, which is reapplying this. So the thing we're really good at doing, if I like skip ahead to here, so the thing we're really good at doing is understanding really understanding player language and player behavior. So in the context of character engine, we're applying that to how is the player interacting with this NPC, but we're also applying that to looking at how do players behave with each other. So what we are doing is working with a handful of developers, and this is a product which we've just entered beta with this as well, which really looks at how are players behaving and speaking to each other, and does that sort of constitute harassment or abuse, right? So if I just run this quickly, so obviously, we know that 52% of players are female, we know that companies have a vested interest in making spaces safer, but that takes huge investment from moderators, right? And it's probably conversational VR as well. I'm sure some of you are aware of the article about the woman who was actually sexually harassed in VR. And that's a problem, because you need to look at not only language, but also actions and behaviors, right? So our second product of the character engine, we call it Ally. Because what we're doing is applying our existing language and behavior recognition technology, plus also doing big data analysis, and applying just really smart design to look for these instances of abuse. And the really the central tenet of what we're doing is the idea that we all have very different boundaries in different contexts, right? So if I might be okay with somebody using a certain word with me or swearing at me in a certain way if they're my best friend, but I wouldn't be okay if it was a stranger, right? And it also might depend on my mood and the type of situation we're in and all of these things. So what the system does is really check in. If you know nothing about you, the system will check in with the player to see if they feel safe. And we do that through the idea of, so I'll show you this demo very quickly. You can see Nora glaring at me in the corner. So this was us applying this idea of having a intervention bot or a character who, maybe it's a character who already greets you into the game and all this kind of thing, and they can also intervene if they think that you're feeling unsafe. So this was an example of, it's just running very slowly for some reason, this video. Okay, so this is an example of just an off-the-shelf MMO that we got in Unity, and we were like, okay, can we just integrate our SDK quickly and easily into the system? So this is an example of somebody following somebody else around, constantly asking them to join a party. We showed this in GDC, so it had to be a very tame example. Obviously, you can imagine that this could be something way more, way less innocuous. So the player who's being targeted has said, leave me alone, right? So then this character intervenes and says, I noticed you might be having a problem, you would seem to be trying to get rid of this other player, are you okay? And so the player can answer in the negative, and then the character will sort of ask additional questions, right? Because it's trying to build up an idea of, okay, what is it about this situation? Shall I block this character completely, and maybe also adjust vigilant settings so that it knows that, hey, you don't like randos following you around, right, and asking you to join a party. Or maybe it's that you're actually fine with that having happened, so you can answer in the affirmative. So you can say something like, yes, I'm fine. And then the bot says, great, are you okay with anything this person says to you? Is it just party invites? And this is the language around this is all customizable. So if you have a game where all the characters are pirates, you can rewrite all of this to suit your particular game, right? So hopefully that gives you a very quick insight into the way our system works. This is obviously the intervention piece, right? And in terms of detection, we're doing all kinds of other cool things. I was going to show you stuff which I probably have no time to do now. But really what we're doing is instead of looking at, so I was going to show you this very, very quickly. So instead of looking at, okay, is there sexual language being used, looking at keywords, all these things, we are running everything through we're classifying everything that's being said, but then also not just doing that, we're also looking at the pattern of interaction, right? Because sexual language might be fine if you've consented to it, but has there actually been an instance of you showing discomfort at something? Has somebody refused something? and said, like, oh, I don't feel comfortable, or go away, or like, I'm not okay with this. And then, surrounding that conversation, has there been an instance of, is the thing that caused that sexual language, right? And then we might think, okay, this might be a potential case of you not being comfortable. It might be unwanted sexual advances or unwanted sexual language. So really, that's a very basic example of just like applying slightly smarter thinking to the way that these interactions are being looked at. So we're doing analysis like that. There's sort of several layers of analysis we're doing. We're doing some predictive analysis as well. So I think that the thing I really wanted to also mention is that I think it kind of really matters sort of who is designing these products, right? I'm really pleased that the team that we've assembled to work on Allies specifically. I think at this point is majority women. We've got Matthew Bryce, who's in the audience as well, who's consultant on Ally, and product manager is a woman. I was involved in design from the beginning, and I think that that really matters, right? So really looking at what are the assumptions, and always questioning the assumptions we're making about data, which I'm sure you all know what that means, right? So I know I've got hardly any time, so I'll wrap up.
I could listen to you talk about this all day. I really wish we had more time. But what we could do is open it up for maybe a couple of questions, and then we'll change things around. So are there any pressing, burning questions people have?
That's easy.
Yeah.
Sure, well, it's not pressing or burning, but I was just wondering, so with the first example, you talked about how in that specific kind of environment, the robot playing dumb was potentially, enrich the story and enrich the narrative of it. Do you have to take steps to indicate to the user when the robot doesn't understand what you're saying, and when the robot is playing kind of into the character? Do you have to ever consider that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, like I said, there are a lot of design issues with the particular scenario that we came up with, and I think that's definitely one of them. How do you
Can you question just for the recording?
Oh, sorry. So the question was, do you need to make apparent to the user when the robot genuinely doesn't understand the question versus when they're just playing dumb? I think that was the essence of what you're asking. And the answer I would say is, that's a difficult problem. It's hard to do in a way that sort of doesn't sort of break the narrative, or break the idea of this is a robot who understands what I'm saying. I think that's one of the reasons why we, in sort of all the other instances, and I think that was a very specific example, right? Like I said, in all the other contexts in which we're working with sort of commercial games companies, it's nothing like that. It's not Paris and trying to lie to you and all of that stuff. I think some of it is just smart writing, right? It really is the job of the narrative designer to sort of come up with a way to catch that. And like I said, we're trying to be as agnostic as possible with that. We're just providing them the tools to be able to write in a smart way.
So when your software is incorporated into a game, does it mean that the entire robot in the model is running locally, sort of offline, or do you have some sort of way of aggregating data and continuing up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the thing about the knowledge model is that you can add to it on the fly as well. So there are definitely contexts we're working with MMOs where we're talking about sort of having, because you can have this running locally or on the cloud. So you can have NPCs, which they all share the same knowledge model, and so if something happens in the world, they all immediately know about it, right? So that's
really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have to bring this to a close, but thank you, Mitu, again. That was
Thank you.
beautiful. Caroline Sinders is our next guest. Caroline is a researcher and artist working in machine learning, conversations, violence, and emotions. She's currently an online harassment researcher and designer at Wikimedia and an IB BuzzFeed project fellow. So please welcome Caroline.
Hi everyone, Nora, thank you for the introduction. So the name of this presentation actually came out of a long conversation Nora and I had where we were talking about how machine learning can understand different kinds of language. And I work at the intersection of technology, rather machine learning, and ethnography. So I like to study subcultures that are often engaging in contentious language. And so the title comes Things Are Things because you have to be very literal with a bot. Things are things. But what happens when things are really hard to define or there aren't set standards of definitions for that thing? Which is online harassment. So this is, I think, a pretty good way to describe me. I like to study how people make technology and how people break technology. For the past 5 years, I've been studying digital protests inside of social networks. The past 2 years, I've focused specifically on online harassment. I started studying Gamergate. And I've been brought onto Wikipedia to study how to study the rise in harassment inside of Wikipedia, primarily amongst editors. And we've been trying to think about what is the role of the moderator, what is our human intervention, and what can technology, specifically machine learning, do to help alleviate like any kind of intervention inside of this space. So this is how a computer understands language. I'll be covering some of my work that I did at IBM Watson, but this is not Watson at all. So I like this graph because I think it does a really good job of breaking down what actually exists inside a sentence, what exists inside of a command. So remind me to feed the baby tomorrow at 7 a.m. Well, the intent is, an agenda, create an event, so that falls down to remind. The time and date's pretty literal, it's tomorrow at 7 a.m. And then what's actually happening, the task is feed. If you're using a reminder bot, you actually don't even have to, the program doesn't actually have to understand what feed means. It just needs to know that that is a thing that needs to be placed somewhere. So the way I actually think about this is, how would you define weather, right? Like, what are all the different ways you could define weather? Is it sunny? Is it hot? Is it hurricanes? Is it, it's storming? I feel like it's overcast. You can start to assign these very literal things to something like weather. So the example would be like, hello, what is the weather today? So then a chatbot, you need a weather API and something involving your location to know where you are, and then it can choose from all these different things that you can assign to, and then you can feed back a response of, hello, it's sunny and 70 degrees. The reason I sort of bring that up is when you start to study conversation inside of a space, you start to realize that conversation actually ends up being language, it ends up being data, and these are all human outputs. So what you're studying is not so much literal things, what you're studying are people. And all the different kind of data that is existed, that we put out there, that we create, it stops being so literal and starts being highly contextual. That's where the fascinating thing about online harassment is it can both be literal and contextual. And so, if you're looking at it inside a system, you're having any kind of AI agent, you end up having to study and create these things that are called conversation trees, or knowledge trees. So this is some work that I've never shown before. This is what I was working on at Watson. We had a chatbot system that we called Dialogue. And part of what I was tasked to do as a designer is think about the ways in which you would create software to give to someone that actually didn't have a background in computer science or engineering, to give them the ability to set up a chatbot, which means I had to take these concepts of what is a chatbot and how language is understood by machine learning and distill it into front-end design so someone could go through and have all these different kinds of methods to create a working chatbot. This presentation that I have from Watson is actually over 100 slides. I'm only showing you 15. So effectively, we had to create an interface where people could use graphic design and elements like adding, creating questions, creating locations, and then all of a sudden build out a conversation. And what you see is that a conversation starts to look like a diagram, or it starts to look like information architecture. So when you're doing something that's pretty literal, such as in this example, where is the library, you can think of all the different responses that exist inside of a certain domain. And in this case, this was for a university. So if someone's asking where the library is, they're probably not asking where the city library is, they're probably asking where the university's library is, which means there could be 2 libraries or 3 or an affiliate library. But all of a sudden things start to get really specific. Things start to be things. and then you can sort of go back and fill out these different areas. So what you see here is like the locations for 2 different libraries. So the information you can feed is like something very literal and concrete, which is the exact address, or it can be, well, I'm asking actually about like the different name of the library. In this case, it's a city, so what it is Geelong Library or Melbourne. But yeah, so then you can see it a lot more and more. And what I found really fascinating about this process is this had one really highly specific task. It's designed for college students that are brand new to a college, that need to ask questions, probably inside of a website that has so much information. So if you think about how big a university website is, what are all the different things you could ask? Well, you're probably asking thousands of questions, from how does my meal card work to when do I register for classes, is my class open, and how do I find this dorm? Another use case we would use this for would be if you're calling a hospital. So if you're calling a phone tree, what are all the different questions that actually don't need to go to a human that can be alleviated or offset to a bot? A lot of those things can be like, what floor is oncology on, or what floor is like the birthing center. Those are things that actually have very literal outputs to them. They're not questions that I'm not sure where to pay, which should be pushed to a human. So that question can be greeted with empathy and a lot of understanding, a lot of what we like to call disambiguation. Disambiguation is if there isn't an answer, or if someone hasn't quite asked the right question, you can ask them more and more and more questions. I think the amazing thing about chatbots is they can be used really well in these very literal scenarios. But given that right now the main part of my work is in online harassment, what do you do when harassment isn't so contextual? It's not something as basic as, where's the library, but this person has said something to me and I feel uncomfortable. We're even beginning to understand and define what is uncomfortable. Unlike weather, which has very specific outsets that we can all agree on, that can be more universal, harassment isn't universal. It can be highly contextual, it can be highly cultural, and we have different standards for what harassment is. And that's something right now we're exploring at Wikimedia, trying to set a standard, a varying standards that can be accessed throughout all of Wikipedia, which is a global website that's translated over 200 different languages. So how do we start to set cultural standards when we don't even have a good definition right now in America of what is harassment? So how do we start to make things become things? So one thing I've been thinking about as I've been tasked to work on this problem is, what exactly is the data set we'd be working from? Is there a data set? How do you start to define harassment? Like, what are different scopes of harassment? What are the responses to certain kinds of harassment? When do we have a support and safety team step in versus a volunteer moderator, since all of Wikipedia is full of volunteer editors? So what it sort of comes back to is what kind of data set are we working through? What kind of thresholds are we creating? I bring this up because any data set you feel will start to determine the characteristics of the AI. Jacqueline's project earlier presentation really touched on that as well. So what kind of chatbot are you creating? What kind of machine learning system are you creating? What data is it fed? And this is where it gets really complicated with harassment, because we have all different kinds of situations that can be harassment. I'm going to switch gears slightly. So for the past 6 months, I've been an Open Lab Fellow between BuzzFeed and IB, and I've been studying the rise of the alt-right in different social networks. One thing that really popped out to me is the kind of harassment that they're engaging in, the kind of hate speech they're engaging in is new and emerging, in a sense that they're using different kinds of language that may not read as harassment even though it is. I'm going to show you a data set I've been creating. So for the past 6 months, I've been reading neo-Nazi blogs. Wow. You can laugh because it's awful. And various subreddits, various spaces on 4chan, 8chan, as well as a Reddit clone called Vote. And what I've been looking at is the different kinds of new vernacular that they're creating that wouldn't necessarily read as harassment, but actually is harassment. It's a dog whistle, right? And I've been also looking at what are the breakdowns of who exists inside of that ecosystem, what are the different tags that tie to them. So the alt-right is very big. The alt-right can be someone that is conservative and young. The alt-right can also be neo-Nazism, and it can be white nationalism, white supremacy. And those three things neo-Nazism, white nationalism, and white supremacy are three different things that have three different political outputs and political definitions to them, which means people are aligned to different political identities. Even though they can overlap, they are really different. So the words that they're using and the intention of the words that they're using are different, even if they don't sound that way necessarily. I'm working on a couple projects right now, one with Tseng, who's presenting later, on creating a Chrome extension to highlight a lot of the terms out of this spreadsheet I've been working on. This is also being used right now for ProPublica as a part of their Documenting Hate initiative, which is analyzing large-scale data sets that they're scraping from different forums to see what kinds of conversations are happening, as well as tracking now different kinds of hate crimes that are reported. So the reason I bring this up is I like to play around with different kinds of APIs that exist that are, have demos for public consumption. Does anyone know what this phrase is? So it says, we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. According to the ADL, this is the most popular white supremacist phrase that's ever been invented. Right now, if you were to use Perspective AI on it, it would say that it has a 30%, like 30% of comments people noted were toxic. That's incredibly low. Perspective is Google Jigsaw's new API they've created to analyze online harassment and toxic conversations. Toxic is defined as lessening or stopping a conversation. So the reason I bring this up is I would probably say this has 100% toxicity of closing down a specific kind of conversation. And one of the reasons I'm mainly showing this is it's not the string of words of we plus must plus secure, etc., or the fact that it's even denoting secure existence, future white children. It's actually the intentionality behind the words. But you wouldn't necessarily know that unless a domain expert could point it out and highlight that. I didn't run through other things that just felt very innocuous. So in Farsi that says, I love you. It's in Chinese at the bottom, it says happy birthday. Those are both rated around 36%. I love Führer is 2%. And you're pretty smart for a girl, which is fucked up dig, is 18. So a lot of the work I'm trying to do in creating, I guess, this idea of different kinds of data sets is I'm trying to make AI more equitable as we're trying to make technology and social media more equitable. And all that does require having to not just analyze sentiment analysis of language, of sentences such as I love you or I hate this, but actually really looking at what is the context behind the different kinds of sentences we engage in, the context of different political movements that exist inside these networks that we also exist in. The way I really contextualize my work is what would it look like if we had more ethnographers working alongside machine learning engineers to try to create systems that are trying to create equity while using technology.
Thank you, Caroline. That was fascinating. Do we have any questions? I'm sure we have questions here.
Yeah, I'm not actually clear, like, what does a bot do? How does it actually mitigate, like, this kind of, what I wouldn't recognize as being offensive or, like the underlying intention? Like, how does the machine mediate that? Is it trying to mediate that? I couldn't understand.
It's not trying, so there isn't like a machine. Oh, sure. So the question was, how is there like an AI or a machine like mediating or mitigating, I guess, any kind of report? At this point, not right now. Like inside of Wikipedia, we don't have like any tools of like autonomous mitigation. And in terms of like what I'm trying to build right now for like this separate project on hate speech, it's also not necessarily about mitigation, it's about awareness. And trying to contextualize and show like this is what harassment can look like. It's not necessarily about first intervening, it's also trying to create more of a data set or corpus around these are the different kinds of harassment, especially if companies are going to try to automate this kind of study. Specifically inside of like at Wikimedia for Wikipedia, we have so many human volunteers, editors, and moderators. So one thing we're trying to do is figure out what are the ways you can use machine learning to help, but there has to be someone at the end of the pipeline looking and analyzing and approving. If you're going to, I think, hand out any kind of punishment, if you will, or any kind of ruling. I don't think a lot of this can just be made autonomously, where it's okay, you're in trouble because we did this. There still needs to be some form of human intervention, and this is at least my belief. So what I'm trying to think of is how do you start to create systems that can do that? Can start partitioning or moving out, okay, this looks like someone's just fighting, and this looks like this is actual hate speech, versus this looks like, rape threats. How do you create those different kinds of thresholds and then different pipelines? Because there is a difference between if someone's making a death threat that should go to a different part of the company versus people are just engaging in a fight, and that can be mediated through another editor stepping in, or in Wikipedia's case, you two just should not be on the same page editing the same thing. Don't interact with each other. Versus do we need our support and safety team to come in immediately and check on someone? Does that make sense? It's creating new pipelines of where things should go. Yeah, we can go on too.
In the measurement of is it toxicity? Is that actually a measurement of the conversation actually having stopped after that? When you say that it shuts conversations down, how does that quantify?
So what's actually quantifying is they had, so it's asking, thanks David. The question was, is this quantifying the percentage of conversations being stopped? When it's quantifying, in sentiment analysis, there's 5 emotions that you're analyzing. It's anger, joy, disgust, fear, and I always forget the last one. Anyway, and oftentimes when people are running sentiment analysis over sentences, when they're analyzing sentences for harassment, they'll use sentiment analysis. What this is trying to do is actually think of are there other kinds of emotions you can analyze? And that emotion could be, this feels more likely to have stopped a conversation. So someone leaving the conversation. They're calling it toxicity or toxic because it's one word and it fits, I think, more classically into that framework. But the rating on this is they had something akin to mechanical Turk, where a bunch of people went through and rated different kinds of interactions and responses on a scale. So 30% of people found a comment like that to be toxic, i.e. closing down the conversation.
Yeah. Just curious to hear your thoughts about how these sorts of AI offensive classifiers might be putting pressure on language, making humans more creative, to come up with things like Operation Google, where we're starting to use everyday terms, branded terms, as placeholders for offensive language, and how do you approach that in your work?
So the question was, will this create a pressure for people to create more slang terms that are hateful, and how does that affect my work? I mean, we already do that. If you look at meme culture, for example, things change so quickly, constantly. When did we go from saying laughing to LOL, right? Or how often do we reference things that are referencing something else or referencing something else? That is the nature of the internet. So I don't think that there's a way to necessarily pre-guess or predate things. I think that there are things that can be done incredibly autonomously, like the project Mitu is working on. But I think when it comes to something that is designed for Twitter, you have to have someone studying and analyzing that, because it does change so quickly. And it's constantly changing. That's just the nature of internet culture, right? What was talked about a year ago may be completely forgotten now, and then what we're doing in a year can be almost impossible to guess.
I understand that there's great value in the work that you're doing in collecting kind of this alternative context for all of these sentence fragments or pieces of language or full sentences, I guess, in the case of the lexicography statement that you posted. But I wonder, to the extent which you're also thinking about or working on ways to measure the toxicity of a statement, not just based on that statement alone, but in context of the user's interactions with the person that they're speaking to or their history. So it seems like that's the other side, whereas like something that I might say, related to what some of the earlier speakers said, something that I might say to somebody that I've had a lot of engagement might read as playful versus somebody I've never spoken to might read as harassment.
Totally, and I think that's definitely something that Mitu's presentation touched on, which, restate the question. Are there things just outside of language that I guess are denoting of harassment to summarize? And yes, there is. Like, one thing we've talked about a lot internally at Wikimedia is how long have these people interacted. A lot is like old user, like an older, more established editor versus a new editor, and that's where a lot of interactions come from. So is there a way to highlight to someone, you're talking to someone who's just started editing, and we have this thing called good faith, like be in good faith about their edits. So like, if someone is brand new to the platform and they're editing, do not assume that they're trying to create spam or what we call like graffiti, that they're trying to purposely mess up a page. Like, try to have a good faith interaction. And I do think that's really important if you look at other systems, particularly spaces like Twitter. Like, I think Gamergate is a really good example. If they had done any kind of network analysis, it'd be really easy to see that a lot of victims of Gamergate had never interacted with their harassers before, and that this was like an out of the norm interaction, right? That like it was a rise in volume for someone who probably didn't have a rise in volume from these people that also were interacting with each other, and all under this umbrella hashtag, and now they're coming to these different, like, they're coming and like dogpiling on their victims, right? It'd be really easy to see that, oh, that's unusual activity. So I do think there are so many different things that can be done just beyond like studying the kinds of language, but I think it's both are really important. Both are key.
So I've read really interesting investigative journalism about the effects on people whose job it is to mark images as explicit for Facebook or Google or other content web companies. I'm wondering about the effects on you of looking at so much far-right garbage all the time, which you have to do and you do heroically, but even as you see the imperative to have a human ethnographer, does this make you wish it could be outsourced to a bot, or that bots would be able to identify this hate?
I guess, so to restate the question is, Jack is really concerned that I look at a lot of alt-right images and is wondering if this could ever be outsourced to a bot. Thank you. Someone always asks me if I'm okay. I mean, I am an activist, so I actually like engaging in a lot of this work in the sense that I feel like it's important because this data set doesn't exist. That doesn't mean now that I look at like the alt-right subreddit every day. I don't. I think I check it like once a week. But a lot of it is, I don't think necessarily, like, I don't think with the ethnography I'm doing, I have to every day engage with it. There's enough information now to where you could use machine learning to analyze like microtrends that exist. So new words that exist clustered around these words we've already established or established words. So, but I think in the beginning you have to have some kind of human ethnographer, right? Like you have to have that, especially if you're studying like a new subculture, in the sense like this subculture has existed for a while, but only now are they calling themselves or grouping together under a specific kind of name, right? And you do need a human there to study it, to understand, especially in this case, what is ironic, what is like hurtful irony, and then what is like seriousness. And I mean, unless someone knows how to teach a bot irony, which I have some ideas on, but that doesn't quite exist yet.
That is all we have time for, but I want to thank Caroline for this, and I encourage all of you to come up to our speakers during the break. Thank you so much, Caroline. So I'm very excited to introduce American Artist, who is an interdisciplinary artist who makes text, videos, and installations about culture and technology and the power structures embedded within them. They are currently a resident of the Whitney Independent Study Program, and their work, Sandy Speaks, is on the big television in the back, so feel free to go and interact with it and talk with it. So please welcome America.
Thank you, Nora. My name is American Artist, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist, and what that means is usually the form the work takes depends on kind of the content, or I guess the conceptual content. So sometimes that might be video, a lot of times it's web-based projects, and the project I was speaking about is obviously a chatbot. It was commissioned by New Hive, which is an online platform for artists to create usually visual works that are interactive, and they wanted to do something that was more politically engaged, and they approached me to be part of a commission on surveillance and prison oversight, and basically when the surveillance that's supposedly created to kind of like, under state terms it's meant to protect us or offer some sort of transparency, it actually fails to do that, especially once people get within prison systems. There's lots of people who die in prison or are mistreated, and the surveillance doesn't really do anything to help that. And so when I was considering what kind of thing I could talk about that seemed to be like the epitome of that moment of where surveillance fails, I thought of Sandra Bland's case in 2015, and that for me was the epitome of prison surveillance gone wrong. It was a moment where she was hyper visible during her arrest, and the video of her arrest went viral, but then after she was in prison, they weren't even able to provide the bare minimum of surveillance to ensure her health and safety and livelihood. So Sandra Bland, she was a 28-year-old black woman from outside of Chicago, and she was in Texas, and she got pulled over for a turn signal that wasn't working properly, and if you've seen the video, it escalated very quickly. It's very violent and hard to watch interaction where, I don't know, the cop had a problem with her smoking her cigarette, or that's at least how it escalated, and it resulted in him forcibly pulling her from the car, taking her outside the frame of the dash cam, and attacking her, and you can hear her during that moment. And yeah, I think this was an important moment to kind of see the ways that the state surveillance couldn't really do what it was supposed to do, but actually had the opposite effect. And the other aspect of Sandra Bland's presence that I think was really relevant to this project was that she had a social media presence. She started creating this video series called Sandy Speaks, which is where the title comes from. And she spoke about police brutality against Black Americans, and she kind of said that it was her mission. She felt inspired, it was God's mission for her to kind of educate people and let them know how they can kind of protect themselves or secure a livelihood amidst an antagonistic state-controlled environment. And for her, it was important that children also have sort of access to understand how they're targeted by the system. And within her video series, she kind of has this polemic but also endearing tone to her presence that it was important for me to kind of capture in doing the project. And for example, the way she kind of starts every video is, "Good morning, beautiful kings and queens," and she would exit it saying, think about what you can do for your kingdom today, and saying what you can do within your own context, within your own environment to kind of secure the bare minimum of justice for people around you. And one of the things she said within these videos is, "In the news we've seen as of late, you could stand there, surrender to the cops, and still be killed." And that seemed to be captured in her own confrontation with the cops. And what you're seeing here is at the beginning of a 52-minute video that's on YouTube of her interaction with the police. And this for me is kind of this moment of the trooper kind of driving before he approaches her vehicle, and obviously I'm not going to show the video, but it's available online still because nothing really leaves the internet. And for me, it's this moment of surveillance. It's not his own surveillance, it's actually surveillance that's meant to keep him accountable, but I think the way that it performs here as he's driving is this weird, I don't know, predatory moment of like trying to find this turn signal. So the basic premise for Sandy Speaks, or what I was trying to kind of capture by making a bot, I wanted to kind of mirror the way that she used social media as a site of transparency or offering some sort of visibility to what she was thinking. And I thought that that was kind of simulated in the way that bots kind of have this ongoing interaction. And so originally I was thinking, okay, she's in prison, this moment where she's completely invisible because there was no proper surveillance in this moment where she supposedly committed suicide. And I was thinking, okay, if she could have created a video or tweeted, which she was also very active on Twitter, what would she have said? What would that have looked like? And that kind of is where the project began. And then the way it became a chatbot was I was thinking, how can I make this interactive? And I also wanted it to be something that it has this quality of, I mean, chatbots are meant to simulate kind of an actual interaction with a person, so I thought it serves kind of like memorialize some sort of interaction with Sandra, but something generous that offered people a way to kind of learn more about their position and also how to protect themselves against the fact that they live in a police state. So if you ask Sandy Speaks questions, she makes it clear that there's a distinction between her and Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland's more of like an inspiration for her or an older sibling or something, but you can ask questions such as, what should I do if I'm arrested? What happened to Sandra Bland? How many people are in prison? Things like that, and she does what she can to kind of respond to that. So it was important to capture Sandra's mission within this project, and watching her videos to kind of capture the language that she used, and he uses a coding language called AIML, which stands for Artificial Intelligence Markup Language, which is something I hadn't previously used, and it became very quickly, I became aware very quickly that that's something that takes an insane amount of labor of writing the script, and I think that that's something I talked about with Nora when I spoke to her about the project, is that the amount of writing that goes into narrative engineering is kind of insane. So it wasn't really, it's not enough for one person to do this project, but I wanted to, I don't know, do my best to kind of create a starting point, and my hope for it is that it would kind of be able to grow based on the interactions that it has with people. And starting with the chatbot platform that I use, which is by this company called Pandora Bots, they have a basis that you can use to start your chatbot, which is called Rosie, and it's this, I don't know, very problematic kind of set of language that you can start from, because it's very like sexist. It's like has this kind of subservient tone, and like it's very much like what you would expect a chatbot to sound like maybe 20 years ago. And so I found out very quickly that I wouldn't be able to use any of that because I didn't think it did justice to the way Sandra Bland's tone could kind of be communicated and offer something more nuanced and more like you're actually speaking to a person. I also didn't want it to feel heavily gendered, but something that could kind of reflect the way we might view someone after they're deceased, which is, I don't know, something more abstract, something outside of time or kind of outside of a specific body. So some of the limitations I had on the project, one is that even though I wanted it to challenge the bureaucratic nature of bots, in that you always feel like you're talking to someone to try and find transparency or try and find an answer, but you're kind of rerouted and never seem to get to the information you're trying to find. I wanted Sandy to be radically transparent or be able to be intent on actually providing you with the information that you wanted to come across. And I think because of the limited amount of narrative that I could design for the bot, it still comes across as slightly bureaucratic. There's not that many answers that are there. But I think potentially if it were extended, it could do something to provide more information for users. Another thing that I noticed was that when trying to kind of communicate these statistics through Sandy's tone, it's hard to apply this sort of conversational tone that she performs in her videos to statistics that are very technical and lengthy. And I think at the end of the day, that's also why it felt bureaucratic, because when you ask the questions, they end up becoming very long and direct and just very empirical pieces of data, and it kind of exits the conversational tone. And I think the only time it could really be conversational is when you're reading it, or when you kind of hit a dead end where it can't answer the question. So these kind of moments of protocol where she's trying to figure out what it is you're after, and you aren't asking something specific, that's when it kind of feels more human, or kind of has this tone of Sandra Bland speaking. Another problem I noticed is that when trying to find stats to provide the bot with knowledge, most of the statistics are based on surveys the government performs, like asking people in jail, who work in jails, how many deaths happened this year or whatever, which is obviously unreliable, and that data can kind of be, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily have to be true. It's based on a survey that people are answering, and that data isn't released until like years later. So I think it's also kind of impossible to make something that is actually radically transparent based on the information that's available publicly. And yeah, I think ultimately it would be interesting to see how this might develop if there were more resources and more time to kind of build out the language of the bot long term. And I think potentially that's something that could be explored if the bot stays longer.
Great. Thank you so much. Here. So we have our final 10-minute question and answer session. I actually wanted to ask you a quick question. That was fascinating. And what it made me think of is, I wanted to ask first whether you had done research and or had conversations with other bureaucratic state bots and like doing the research, because I can't remember a time like the 80s on when I haven't encountered a phone tree or some sort of conversational AI that was affiliated with the government that wasn't demoralizing, like crushed me. Like what, even if you came with a question that you wanted to answer, you give up by the end of it. And do you see in the process of building Sandy Speaks the possibility of having a radically empathetic or human bureaucratic AI? Is there a possibility for state bots that can balance out supremacy and capitalism as they're mediated within bots, or not?
Well, I think any possibility of that would require such nuance and awareness.
So I'm just noticing a theme over this day about a relationship between missing data and AI can fill in for that. And there's something very specific here. We don't know what happened to Sandra Bland, but we need this kind of AI to kind of speak with her. And she never really says, but actually, we hear the conversation and try to, in a way, cope with reality through this. And I was just kind of curious about the use of this, understand that so many people are disappeared through this. And if you run into connections through like disappearance while making visible through AI, or just your thoughts on like trying to deal with people where it's constantly disappeared through these kind of like, human-like interfaces.
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean by people being disappeared through these interfaces.
Oh no, being disappeared and representing them through these interfaces.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this can't do anything to kind of replace the way people have access to like her image or like actually seeing the videos that she provided. And I think that it's important that those, I guess, are still accessed, or that people still have a way of continuing with the actual image or presence of the person. And I don't know if it's really meant to like hide that or mask any sort of disappearance, but merely extend whatever it is her initial image was intended to do. Yeah.
I guess I'm just interested to hear about the process of the UX design of the chatbot. It looks, I really like how it looks, and it seems very specific.
The question is about the UX design of the chatbot.
I wanted something that didn't rely on images, specifically her image, to kind of have an interface. The same reason, like I wouldn't want to necessarily show the video footage. I think that, I don't know, it has to be something that doesn't require this like sort of return to that like initial violent action or like experience. I think so I wanted something that was text-based, and also, as I said before, I wanted it to kind of reflect the social media, like Twitter use. And so the background for this video is kind of this short loop of part of the footage of the interaction, and it's kind of blurred out. And I don't know, aside from that, it still is more of like a traditional chatbot interface, and I think for me that was also part of the limitation, because I wanted it to be something more abstracted or that didn't feel bureaucratic at all, that could kind of like be totally outside of this like very traditionally computer or mechanical interface. And so I've done that to a degree, but it's still not as much as I think we could go.
We have one more question. Did you still want to ask?
Yes, I was wondering if you worked with Sandra Bland's family to get a better sense of her personality and the way she's feeling.
I'll just restate. The question was whether you had worked with Sandra Bland's family to get a sense of her personality and the syntax.
I did not interact with her family, and I think that could have provided definitely more context by which to approach this project. I guess I felt like it was a relatively small project at the time of its development, and so I didn't have so many resources and I didn't do a lot of outreach. But I think that if this were to gain any sort of like larger representation or visibility, it would be important to be in conversation with the family to kind of understand how it should be situated or how it should be framed, or how it could go further to like extend the mission of Sandra Bland.
That's all we have time for. Thank you so much, American. So I want to introduce you to Sam and Francis. Sam Hart in black is a scientist, publisher, and artist. Sam's laboratory work at Sloan Kettering spans computational genomics and cellular engineering. He's also founder and editor-in-chief of Avant.org and curator of the online technical catalog Research Tactics. And Francis Tseng is a designer and software engineer interested in simulation, machine learning, games, and politics. In the past, he was a designer at Video and Open News Fellow at the Coral Project, and has taught about technology and journalism at the New School. He is presently a researcher in residence at New Inc. and co-publisher of the New Inc. 3. So please welcome them both.
Test. Hello? All right. Thanks, Nora. I have some thank yous. So, first of all, thank you to Nora for inviting me to participate in this and help with this program. It's really an honor to have been with her in kind of conceiving it and helping assemble the exhibition. So and today's program. And I am just incredibly fond of Nora's research. So it's I hope to be able to surface that and we'll be publishing some of her writing that she's been working on in the process of assembling this the conference and just in her publishing practice. So also thank you to Paul Soelis, who is not here. He is at another conference. But I am incredibly fond of his work, and it's really been a pleasure to present that in conjunction with some of the dialogues we've had today. And yeah, finally, just Eileen for hosting and letting us use all of their equipment and for being hospitable. It's really a unique opportunity to present work in this space, so I'm very excited to do so. I just want to turn to the conversation that Francis and I are going to have today. This is supposed to be kind of informal. We've been chatting about a number of topics. The feedbacks we've had kind of like politics. We've had a couple of recent conversations on kind of related topics, and we're going to try to string those together. It's going to be a little meandering. We have like kind of a template, but we'll see how it goes. So we were also kind of asked, or we wanted to present kind of a demo for this bot workshop that we're going to be doing. And we didn't really know what we were going to do until yesterday. And we built it mostly during the conference today. So we're really not sure what's going to happen. Do you want to talk about that?
Okay. So basically, it's like really, really simple. But to prepare for this talk, what Sam and I were doing, where it was we were compiling a bunch of links and stuff and papers and so on in an arena channel. And something we're both interested in is how bots use language to interface with each other. Over the past year, there's been more research into this sort of notion of cooperative bots or agents that sort of collaborate to solve a problem together. I think until recently, most of our conception of bots and AIs has been around like a single algorithm or model that just like makes decisions on its own. but more recently Google and Facebook and the OpenAI nonprofit have published some work where they set a few different bots out on a task and they learn their own sort of communication protocol. They learn essentially their own language to coordinate and accomplish a task. And that's sort of related to what got us thinking about the notion of language games, which is this concept basically where language or words never have really fixed meanings. They're all sort of dependent on context or a game, basically. And so it's like, I think one example is like if you walk by someone in a hallway and you're like, hey, how's it going? The expectation there isn't for them to actually start talking about how things are going for them. It's more just meant to be like greeting. But that same utterance, that same phrase in a very different context, or one way to say it is in a different set of rules, in a different game, expects a different response. And so, yeah.
Yeah, so in addition to that, my kind of understanding is that Wittgenstein basically used language games as kind of a catch-all for a number of different scenarios. One is a scenario in which you're kind of simulating language by considering a subset of words and phrases and syntactic constructs. And so you can think about a game as a fixed set of language that you are playing within. And then the other is basically thinking about natural language in the wild and then trying to consider only a subset of that with the understanding that there's more to the world. So in one scenario, you have kind of this perfect model of what language does and how it acts, and the other, you are extrapolating about that world through your model. And yeah, so
I think there are two really interesting things to come out of this sort of emergent research in bot cooperativism, or just like bots collaborating on tasks. One is this language aspect. One is that now we have this idea, I think, of bots that have to learn in a social manner, like social learning, so they have to communicate to each other and so on, which necessitates this language. And then there's this other question of if bots develop their own language based on tasks or something like that, and this language has no basis in human language, right? It's totally developed and learned for that particular task. I think a really interesting question is what's sort of the mutual intelligibility of their language and our languages. And this sort of connects to this notion of like, if that's a different kind of intelligence than we have as humans, like so this extra human or inhuman intelligence, and so that they learn their own ways of referring to things and so on. So there's another famous saying by Wittgenstein where he says, if a lion could talk, we wouldn't be able to understand him, because even if a lion was capable of using, say, English words, the lion's point of references would be so vastly different than the human experience that we would not be able to actually understand what they were saying.
So another thing that we've been discussing a little bit is you're trying to model language. You do so by considering these small world scenarios, and those scenarios are generally adversarial or cooperative, and use it. So you can kind of consider the internal logic of a bot as like a language game of one, or you can have a conversation between bots, and so one thing that we've been, so Francis and I both have a kind of an ongoing interest in simulation as just kind of a general thread. We've published a bunch on it through the magazine that I've run, and we both like build simulations for our work. And yeah, and so when you're thinking about like an agent-based simulation, generally, yeah, the way these work is like there's an internal logic, which is kind of the language game, the language game of the bot, of a single bot, and then you're encountering another agent, and yeah, and so we've been kind of likening this to humans interacting. So we like kind of recently had a conversation about this notion of mind reading, basically, where in order to like kind of encounter another individual, what we do is we try to have a mental simulation of what the other person is thinking, like how they're going to act, how they're going to respond, and then we kind of like do a calculation and proceed accordingly. So, this also just like ties back to agential bots.
So I think what's also interesting is it's sort of the way technology works nowadays, and the way sort of we try to develop these kind of personas for bots, I suppose, is that we have to do that same sort of mental modeling of bots themselves. And I think we do this naturally anyways, so we have this kind of tendency to anthropomorphize things that even don't really show any sign of intelligence, like I don't know, some shared object or something like that. And so I think it's funny that now when we maybe interact with a bot, we kind of have to sort of assess mentally like what its motives might be, or like what is its thought process, quote unquote thought process, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is pretty much how our entire day has gone. Yeah, so
So I mean, something else that we're interested in, and this is sort of in line with simulation and sort of this question of like thinking of bots not as individual bots, but as sort of like a collective entity of bots, is this what I would call bot populism. So there's all this speculation as to what is the role of political bots in not only the U.S. election, but in the election of like Mexico and these other countries and so on. And talking about simulation, I think it's interesting that bots, it's kind of fucked up that bots can sort of unmask like on a network like Twitter or something like that, essentially simulate kind of populism. And so this kind of virtual populism, and I was trying to, we're talking about like what are some precedents for this, and what are other sort of forms of virtual populism. One is like state media, in which they would sort of make it seem like a policy or a candidate has widespread popular support when they don't. Another example is the practice of astroturfing in marketing, which is like, the joke is sort of astroturfing is a fake grassroots movement, where you pay people who are maybe not use bots to make it look like the product is really popular.
So another thing kind of related to this that came up recently is when you're kind of thinking about how a single bot like interacts in the wild, one kind of remark that Francis said was like bots kind of have this like local agenda. They're like maximizing a single value, you know, and this happens to be like really effective for the distribution of like very specific like political ideas, and so there happens to be this kind of this sweet spot where the like social web that a bot is like working within, oftentimes in the term with regard to social bots, and like what a bot is good at, which is like maximizing one thing and like distributing that to the greatest extent possible. So I think how I kind of think about this is in relation to, or a good model of this is in relation to high-frequency trading. And this is kind of one of the reasons that I included some of the high-frequency trading and visualizations on the point on the back. It's just this nice, I think it's a good model for how some of these bots kind of interact in the social arena. So if you notice like the plots that are going on in the back, like you basically get to see you get to see high-frequency trading like being introduced to the market and like what that does to the market, how the market operates, and how it's just this very different kind of information landscape.
So bots kind of need to model themselves now. Like they need to anticipate their own impact on the market in order to, that's interesting. Something else about sort of getting to the point where like we're talking about how bots as a population influence society, whether it's the markets or the politics, something like that. And I'm wondering like what the inverse of that is. Like how can people influence the behavior of these bots? I think like the most well-known example is probably Pay, the Microsoft bot. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with. But one thing I'm interested in is like if bot psychology is a thing. Like if these bots sort of operate with these sort of like algorithmic mechanics, can you actually, maybe just by observing the behavior of the bot or by examining the code, determine certain inputs that would cause it to behave in a certain way? So there's like an example, what's an example? So Pay, there's like the literal loophole where if you say repeat after me and then something, Pay will repeat that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly, that's what it is. Okay. And another example is SQL injection, where it's like if there's an input field on a site, like you have to create a username or something, on unprotected forms, if you enter in like a certain code statement, like a SQL statement, it can actually have the effect of maybe destroying the database or something like that. So there's like these sequences of words that can trigger these unintended effects, and there is like a weird psychology to it, I think, in terms of, like you apply similar, I think, psychological principles at least, in trying to understand what words do what. I just recently finished the book Snow Crash. I just read it. But in it, it's like centered around this idea of namshut, I think is how you say it, which is like these sequences of utterances that cause people to like do very specific things. And I don't know, it was just interesting parallels.
I think it's really interesting to contrast that idea with the notion that intelligent machines are kind of beyond reason, which is, I mean, literally what we're talking about is like a machine that's so dumb, if you just say the right word, it does what you want. Yeah, I think it's just very far from an intelligence that surpasses human intelligence. On the other hand, I do think that if we kind of consider bots like as kind of as a kind of macro culture, so like the multiple bots interacting with one another, like that, the social organism that's made, that's produced from multiple agents working together, does become unintelligible in a way, or you have to kind of read it in very specific terms. So yeah, so I mean, so one thing that we were kind of touching on was like how do we start thinking about collections of bots that are maybe difficult to understand in the aggregate? Like, are there good analogs? And like, what are the deficiencies of models for like ecological intelligence? So some of the things that I was kind of trying to bring up, or if we can mention this. So if you think about instead of like an individual like bacteria as an intelligence, but like a culture as an intelligence, or if we think about cities as intelligence, like as a social organism, like are those good analogs for a bot intelligence?
Yeah, so I don't think he was the first to come up with this, but I know Nick Land sort of advocates this notion that capitalism is the first and only AI, and that it sort of like has this intelligence in terms of how it's sort of shaped, like speaking, I'm very like much anthropomorphizing it right now, but like the way it shapes the world sort of in its vision, and instills us all with this kind of like logic to sort of perpetuate it and so on. And I think that brings it back to this question of if capitalism, if the city and so on is like a form of intelligence, what is the sort of, again, the interintelligence, intelligibility? Like, we spend so much time trying to understand these more complex sort of aggregate intelligent phenomena, like an economy, for instance, something like that. And like, I guess when we're talking about an ecology of bots, I wonder if we'll just face the same problem where it's just too complex to really fully grasp.
Yeah, so maybe I can pose this question. I mean, I think we both kind of are committed to the idea that like simulation is a way to understand like aggregate behavior, and like there's always kind of deficiencies in simulation, but the kind of process of making these things intelligible is oftentimes like seeing the deficiency and like understanding that that is, is the thing that you're interested in, or just making simple models and trying to have that like really capture what's going on so that you can kind of distill what that intelligence system is doing. So yeah, we both like have tried to do this in like different forms. Like I've done some simulation of, we're being told that we have very little time left. But I've done this in like biological systems, and you've done some like social simulation. But I think we're both kind of at the very beginning of this, and it's like unclear whether, to the extent to which this works for like bot simulation or bots like interacting in like human social environments.
Yeah, I guess really quickly, like Sam said, I worked on some social simulation stuff, and pretty simple economic simulations. And it's really hard to get right. It's really hard to, no model is ever meant to be a sort of one-to-one with its referent. Like, you sort of out of necessity of computational power, but also just because like you don't want to make a model as complex as the system you're studying because you gain no insights. So these simulations are always necessarily simpler than what they're simulating, but you still, I think, can learn something for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's like this, similar, you kind of notice similar things, but when you're looking at biological systems, is that oftentimes you fit well to one observed behavior, and maybe you don't fit well to something else. So a lot of it is about kind of identifying the right problems and like really being explicit about what you're trying to look for and what you're not trying to look for, and those are really difficult questions. I don't know the extent to which we're having that conversation when we often talk about like internet trolls who are kind of influencing municipal or like state politics. So I think we're like pretty much out of time. Maybe we have 5 minutes to go. We wanted to open up to like a couple of questions, and again, just thank all of you for coming. We covered like a lot of ground really quickly. That was pretty ad hoc, but are there any questions?
Do you have any observed examples of bots interacting and causing effects in the world?
Just a question.
So the question is, have we observed any sort of like actual instances of bots interacting and affecting the world like that? I think it's definitely happened in other countries, maybe here, but in Mexico I know that there are a lot of like political troll bots that sort of were fairly successful, in my understanding, and sort of influencing the election there. Sometimes these may actually also be, sometimes like bots are cheap enough, or computation's cheap enough now that relatively small actors can do that kind of thing, but there's also, of course, state actors that are doing similar things.
And the example I always go to is the financial crisis. I think that is really direct result of like a new trading environment, new marketplace, where we don't have like a good understanding of the risks or the kind of behaviors that are going on. Like that the fact that we oftentimes have like enormous fluctuations that are just kind of unidentifiable, and yeah, I think that's a nice like example to point to, the kind of political agency of bots, whether or not it's intentional or not.
I think bots could ever be, like, would it ever be possible for bots to be any sort of neutral entity, or is that a fantasy?
The question is, can bots be neutral, or is that a fantasy? I guess I'm getting kind of caught up in like, in terms, like, to some extent I don't really believe that a bot can be neutral. Like, it's put into the world to do something. Like, that's just kind of like,
it's put into
generally
by
like,
human beings.
Yeah, it's like, why are you making something unless you're trying to have it do something? It can be ineffective, certainly. But yeah, I guess I would say yes. Like, they can be neutral, or they can kind of like, they can like define a they can define an ecosystem without having like a positive or negative effect on like a certain thing that you're interested in, but they nevertheless are like interacting with that system. So that's like not a very direct answer.
I don't know, it's a really hard question. I would guess I'd say generally no, I don't think they can be really neutral. Partially because of what you were saying, or that if you're making a bot to do something, it's likely that you want it to have some effect on the world. I think maybe another way to think about it is that, and I guess this depends on exactly how you program the bot, but the way right now a lot of bots are programmed is that they're sort of, they like kind of calcify or ossify a lot of social conventions, I think. Like, they're kind of static in many ways, and so they become sort of imprinted with a certain way of interacting with people, and then I think that comes with a kind of inflexibility, and from that point I would say, insofar as maintaining a status quo of social interaction or social norms is not neutral, I would say that bots are also not neutral in that sense. Maybe.
Yeah, broadly set of humans too, like can a human be apolitical? If you're calling something an agent, then kind of by definition it's going to be political in some way. Maybe one.
This is maybe more logistical than an actual question, but I'm really enjoying the text. Is it published anywhere? Can we find it? Can we read it in its entirety anywhere?
Yeah, we'll work on that. We literally finished this 15 minutes ago. Yeah, we can copy that just from the, this is like Francis's term. We will try, and if we don't, then we will simulate it somehow and print it.
All the readings that the text is being drawn from, those are in a Marina channel that we can just make public.
Yeah, I think it is public.
It is public. Cool. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you again for coming.